Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. At the request of one of my patrons recently, she wanted me to do a pendant that also could be turned into a pin, or a pin that could be turned into a pendant. And I realized that I don't remember if I've ever done that or not on my channel, so I thought I'd do that. And I thought I'd share it with YouTube as well, not just Patreon, because it's a useful kind of thing to do. So I picked out a piece of black onyx, and I'm going to make kind of a simple-ish sort of swirly pin, and then we'll add a bail to the back of it and show you how I do that. It should be a pretty easy project, and I've done it a few times before, and so I'm not too concerned about the difficulty of it, but we'll see. Before we do that, though, I want to thank my patrons over on Patreon. They're kind of my core group of supporters. I couldn't do this without their help. They've created this really nice community of people over there who share ideas and resources and show each other their stuff, and then get some input from others. It's a great place over there, and I really enjoy interacting with that group. So thanks for making it that way, and thank you for your financial support as well. My YouTube subscribers, we just passed 25,600, I believe. That's amazing. Thank you for that. I love the kind comments I get from most people. It's really nice to know that some of what I'm doing here is helping you, so thanks for letting me know that. I appreciate that. And I do appreciate the financial support as well, the buy me a coffees, super thanks, buying my merch, my ebooks, all of that stuff makes my channel sustainable, and I really appreciate it, so thank you. Okay, well, let's get started on this pin pendant combo. Now, this is one of my design ideas sketchbooks. I have a number of different models on the merch store. This particular one has a gauge to inches to millimeters chart on the back, which I find pretty useful. The real feature in these that I like the best is the dot matrix in the background, which is sort of subdued, but helps me to draw better pictures, at least sometimes. The real reason I like these, though, is because ever since I started doing the YouTube channel, I started keeping a record of what I made so that I'd have something to look back on and be able to figure out how I did it, because honestly, after 600 and some videos, I don't remember everything I've done, and I may start getting repetitive if I don't have something to look through. But it's nice to be able to see how I did it in case I want to recreate it again. But, for today's project, I picked out a black onyx, kind of just a big, flattish sort of cabochon, and it's about a 22 by 30, and I'm just going to make a simple kind of pin it with some outside decorations like that. And then on the back, we're going to put a pin right here, so you can wear it as a pin, and I'll put some double hidden bail on the back up here where you can't see it from the front, but it'll allow you to run a chain through there and wear it as a necklace instead. So it's not too hard to do this. I say that knock on wood because that usually means that I'm going to have problems tonight, but we'll see. The materials I'm going to use for these pieces, I took some 14 gauge square wire and I flattened it out. It's probably about a millimeter thick, so it's definitely thinner in one dimension than the other, and that's what I'll make these little decorations on the outside from. The bottom of the bezel, I'm going to use 26 gauge sheet. There's no particular reason to use thicker for this one. I'll use some of this flattened stuff for the little parts that I'm going to hook the hook onto, and the actual pin itself is going to be made out of 16 gauge round. So what I'll do is I'll solder it on straight up like this. I'm going to twist it to work harden it after everything's all polished, and then we'll make a little loop in it and run it through there. And that should give it a little bit of a springiness, so it pops open. You can put it in and then pop it back underneath the little clasp. It's just going to be kind of a little hook that goes over there. So pretty straightforward. Let's get started making a bezel here. For the bezel, I'm going to use 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip in 26 gauge, which is 0.41 millimeters. That's not the right stuff. This is the right stuff. Okay. Oops, let's do it that way. Okay, it's a little bit easier to see. Just get this end flat. I'll definitely cut this shorter when I'm getting ready to set the stone. It doesn't need to be this tall. scratch where they come together, maybe slightly past where they come together so that I have a little room for filing. Okay, when I make bezels I usually make them into kind of an angular shape before I do it. Makes it a little bit easier for me to solder the solder joint closed. If you're interested in the types of solder that I use and the flux and my torch and everything, I'll put some information right there for you. When I have a little bit bigger bezel like this, if you want these two ends to be pushing together nice, it makes it a little bit easier if you put a dimple in the bottom down there like that. That makes the overall thing just a little bit springier. And we want the springiness pushing those together, ideally. Here's a quiz for you if you're pretty new. Why do you think I want those pushing together pretty hard? There's a particular reason for it. Answer me in the comments if you know the answer. Oops. Little pieces of scrap flying everywhere. I usually de-animal hair my shirts and I forgot to tonight, so I apologize for being covered with pet hair. Oops. Looks like we did okay on size. Okay, let's cut a piece of 26 gauge sheet to the back of this. I wanted to give a shout out to somebody who gives me a shout out occasionally when I appreciate it, and I haven't reciprocated, and I should have. He makes really fun stuff. He's out of Colorado as well. His channel's name is Boom Jewelry, so I'll put a link in the video description to his stuff too. He has a good sense of humor, and he's makes some really interesting stuff, so I think it might be advantageous for you to subscribe to his channel too. I'll just put those up there against the side and on the bottom. And just kind of heat around the outside. There is, on a bigger bezel like this, there's quite a bit of surface area in the middle, so you want to visit that once in a while. You do, however, want to kind of avoid the bezel with the direct flame if you can, so kind of keep it moving around. You can also, if you struggle to get the back sheet up to temperature before you melt your bezel, sometimes when you're a beginner, or when you're using really thick sheet for the back for whatever reason, it helps if you lift it up a little bit or elevate it. You can use one of those kind of screen tripod things to get the heat underneath it if you want to. Or I usually just tip it up with my pick and focus the torch underneath it when I'm doing that. That works pretty well. But that's the problem with a lot of when you're a beginner, it's easy to melt your bezel because it's more exposed to the heat up top here, and the other piece is harder to get up to temperature. So let's kind of make sure we got a good seam all the way around. Looks like we do. It's kind of hard to tell when you still have flux on here, but I can tell on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this off, and then we'll file it flush. When you're doing this stage, if you're doing one like this, you don't want to bevel underneath the bezel because you'll cut right into your solder joint that you just created. You also don't want to hit the top of the bezel because it will get kind of thin and fragile. I don't honestly make pins very often. I like making pins, but they just haven't kind of been in style for a while. I don't get a lot of requests for them. So I made kind of a test piece here for one of these side bits. It's not exact, so I think what I'm going to do, it's a little bit short because I was estimating, and so I think I'm going to straighten this out and then cut two pieces that are slightly longer than this, and we'll use those as guides. And in the meantime though, let's put this on here. I have those pretty close to the exact center, I think, so try and get it to be real symmetrical. I'm going to mark hopefully that's pretty close. We'll see. So I'm going to straighten this back out and then we'll see how long it is. Alright. So I think let's cut this off. If you just want to see the pin part, you can skip forward in the video because that'll be closer towards the end. So we got to build the piece first. So what do you think? Maybe just a skosh like that, maybe about 4 millimeters. That'll have to do. Where did the piece go? Pretty close. I think I'm going to round the ends just a little bit so they're not so jaggedy. Like this. Those will be kind of in the midst of a swirl, but that'll give us an overall nicer finished product. Hopefully. I had a lot of ideas for some more complicated pins, but I kind of wanted to focus on the back on this one today just to show that particular aspect of things. We'll have to make some of those other ones I was brainstorming about at some point. Okay, so let's see if we can find the center of this. Oh, we need a little curly cue at the end of each one. I'm going to try and make them as symmetrical as I can. Okay, so now we need to bend it back in the opposite direction right at that center point. So I'm going to set it offset on the pliers just a little bit. I think I like how it kind of curves outwards a little bit too. If I can get it to be pretty symmetrical. That's pretty good. So now we need to make some of these little things. These may all end up being the same size, but I don't know. We'll have to see. Let's take a piece and see how long it takes to make one of these, or how long of a piece it takes to make one of these. I'm going to estimate after making one of the loops. I might have to modify the design slightly. I don't know if I can get them that small. I'm going to try and make them a tiny bit shorter than this. See how that works. So I'm going to cut two of them, and we'll make one of them and see if it suits, and then we'll use the second one as a template for the other ones. So let's just go a tiny bit smaller. Not like that much. So I'm going to set that over here, hopefully not lose track of it. And let's round the ends of this one and see how if we can get it spiraled tightly enough for that. Okay, let's see what we can do here. Well, let's make a few more of those and see how it works. What's the worst thing that can happen? So I'm going to use this and cut. Let's see if we need 4 more after this. Good idea to always cut an extra piece. And I'm going to cut it off one of these messed up ones. That way it can just be a template in case we screw up. Save us a little figuring out again. Okay, so there's an extra one, a template. Okay, I'm going to file all the ends of these down. Another option, if these are too long, we could always cut these shorter and have them join in the middle a little bit closer together. That might be easy if we run out of room. So My initial thought was to solder these on right away, but I'm kind of glad I didn't if I need to alter them. We'll see. Just a little bit shy. So I think I'm going to cut the middle out of these two, just to the same amount, to shorten them this way a little bit and solder them back together. See if that fixes it. Oh, that's kind of nice too, like that. Maybe I should just do it like that. I like that better than the original drawing anyway. So I'm going to spend a little time flattening these out, I think. The trick will be not to bump things too much. So I do something called pick soldering, which is where I pick up a bit of solder on the end of my pick, heat the whole thing up to the flow temperature, and then touch it where I want it to go. It's kind of tricky to learn, but once you do, it really makes a huge difference in what you can do. So if you're interested, I have a good video about it right there. Check that out. Alright, let's get this thing all fluxed. Once you get it up to temperature, it goes quicker. You don't have to, every time you bring a torch back, you don't have to reheat the whole thing as much. That's pretty good. That was less well done. What I did was I jumped the gun a little bit, moved it in too soon. I want to make sure all of these are soldered to each other as well, just to make them a little stronger. That looks sort of ornate and pinish. I think of pins as old-fashioned, I guess. You see all those kind of bar pins from the kind of the Victorian through the Art Deco period. Alright, let's see where we're at here. I like that far better, having those sticking out a little bit. It just gives it some character. So I'm going to clean this up just a skosh and it'll be okay. Okay, so I just kind of cleaned up the back to speed things up. I've cut 2 small pieces of that leftover square wire that we flattened out a little bit. And I'm going to make this into a little hidden bail. A little staple shape like that. This is a magnesia block. It's a soft block that you can push stuff into. So it's handy when you need to, like these things that if I tried to solder this onto the back and those were elevated, you run the risk of them falling off, which is no fun for anybody. Okay, that's pretty straight, I think. We're going to do it that way, whether it's straight or not. The reason I'm tentatively trying that flux is because sometimes if you hit it with the heat too fast, when it boils, it'll move things around a little bit. And after all, with a careful position, wouldn't that be a shame? Okay, a lot of more mass, there's lots more mass in the piece on the bottom than these little tiny bits up here. Sometimes I sweat some solder right onto the bottom, or what am I trying to say? Hidden veil. So for the little hook for my pin, I'm going to use another piece of this stuff. And I think what I'll probably do is let's bend it over. Alright. So I'm going to cut this off towards the bottom there. But I've just made the little hook that will catch the pin that we're going to have on here. I'm going to pick a little solder on there. So it's already got solder in place, then we'll just put it where I want it to go. There we go. Okay, there. Now, let's find some of that 16 gauge round I was going to use for a pin. I'm actually going to take this and I'm going to flatten this just a skosh. I'm kind of going to do the same thing that I did before, in that I'm going to bend this over. I want a wider contact point than just a single end of the wire, so we'll be plopping this right like that. So I think this time I'm gonna sweat some solder on there and see how that works. About there, probably. So once that pickles for a while, I'll polish it up, but then I'm going to take this wire here because it's really soft and annealed by doing all this heating we've been doing. So it's not going to have the characteristics you'd want for a sharp pin. And in order to make that happen, we're going to have to take this and twist it this way. That'll work hard the entire length of it pretty quickly, and that'll make it much stiffer. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little loop right here. You've probably seen this on pins before where it gives it a little extra spring upwards. And so we'll do that, and then we'll put it through there and cut it off. Somewhere along the way we'll file the end to kind of a rounded point, and then we'll have our pin. And then we'll set the stone at the end. So I got it pretty much polished up. I'm going to kind of straighten this out. And I bent this over so that I could twist it a little bit, which should work harden it. I don't want to get too crazy, but now we need to make a little loop on this, which is going to be kind of hard to do. I have to kind of pull it around like this. Get this nice and straight I left this kind of long for the little hook here, so I'm going to cut it off a bit more. I'll probably round it out with my rotary tool, and see that'll just kind of pop under there like that. So I think I'm going to cut it off about right there. And then I will use my rotary tool to kind of shape that into more of a point and clean everything up with any kind of Dremel wheel we need to do that. This I may push it down just a little bit more. Too far there. You want it to be snug in there, but you want to be able to get it in there too. So that's close. Okay, that goes in okay. So we'll get that taken to a point, and let's set this stone. So I do this a little differently than some. I use the flat side of my chain nose pliers as a bezel pusher, and then I use the rounded part out here as a burnisher. It's not the only way to do things, it's just the way I do things. So most people use a bezel pusher and a burnishing tool. Interesting thing about black onyx is that there is no natural black onyx, as far as I've been told. It's only other onyx that's been dyed black. Last step, I'm just going to burnish this a little bit. Just to put some pressure on the top edge, try and get it nice and smooth and symmetrical. Okay, so I'll get that cleaned up the rest of the way. I'm going to get that ground down to a point, and let me grab a chain, and then we run a chain through here, should be able to wear it as a pendant too. So one thing I did want to show you, I did a video just a week or two ago about setting a little faceted stone and in the middle of another stone and drilling it through. This is one of those settings, I think, that if you put a little faceted stone right in the center there, that would look very antique and very classy. So you might consider doing that. I'll put a link to that video if you're interested. I thought that was fun and much easier to do than I expected. So my pendant, there's my pin. So I'll get that cleaned up for some better pictures and I'll put them at the end. So let me know what you think. Okay, well that was how to do a pin and pendant combo. I hope you enjoyed that and maybe got something out of it. If you did, I would love it if you'd hit the like button for me. That really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate that. I'd also love it if you'd take a moment and check out my main channel page. I have 660-ish videos now. There's almost certainly something else you'll find useful or interesting over there. I try to do a lot of different kinds of projects, different art periods, things like that, and also some skills. There's definitely content that's for different skill levels in metalsmithing. So check it out. I think you'll find there's a lot of useful stuff there. Hopefully after doing that you'll decide to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. There's no cost to do that and it really helps my channel, so thanks in advance for that. I'd also like it if you check out the video description down below. There's information about this video, but there's also some links to some important places for me. There's a link to my merch store if you want to get yourself one of those nice design idea sketchbooks that I showed you at the beginning. And there's a bunch of other merch over there too, so check out some of the cool things over there. Maybe get yourself a present. There's a link to my ebooks. We're currently working on 2025s, frantically trying to get it done before the end of the year. There's about 170 pages in each of them, so each one has a page for each of the tutorials I did during that year. So far I've done 2023 and 2024 and they've been pretty popular. But each one has like 170 pages, and on each page there's information about the video, including a picture of the sketch I drew, a picture of the final outcome, a list of materials, a difficulty rating, and some notes I made about the project outside of what I tell you in the video. So things like, did I like the outcome? Would I do it differently if I was to do it again? What parts of it were hard or difficult, and would I change the way I did it because of that? Or did I learn something new that I didn't know before? It's a great way to have a whole bunch of projects at your fingertips and a nice way to support my channel. So you can get 2023s and 2024s as a package deal for a little bit off, and I'm sure once we release 2025s, which will be right after the first of the year, that'll be available. And also we'll probably set it up to where you can get all three for a discount as well. All right, well thanks for watching today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.